not so much Vetch's Reef as such, it's that entire area. At the moment, with climate change, and we all know the impacts of climate change, it is really foolhardy to build a hotel in the sea, in the intertidal zone, and to build a parking garage under the sea. I'm not saying you can't engineer this, you can engineer it, but it is very costly to maintain that engineering monstrosity. And that will become the responsibility of the ratepayers of Durban to maintain that, while the developer walks away rubbing his hands in glee, making a lot of money. And the ratepayers of Durban are going to be left with carrying that burden, and it's not fair.
Citizens of Durban have been using this area for many years for a range of water sport activities, such as snorkeling, fishing, swimming, beach walking and sailing. If the development goes ahead, there is no question in my mind that it will be compromised. All these activities will change. We're going to condense, or we will be forced to condense our activities into a tiny little scrap of beach at the expense of creating a concrete area, which will be very user unfriendly. It's going to become a look but don't touch area. In other words, people can sit and look at the sea but not actually use it, which they are physically doing at the moment.
It is unique on the Natal coast. It's the largest subtidal reef on the Natal coast. It's got the largest single mussels, and as well as there's 15 tons of red bait and about 60 tons of mussels on this reef. It supports a variety of fish life, acts as a nursery ground for the other species around the eThekwini area, upon which the fisher folk rely on for their livelihoods and their way of life.
Specifically with regard to sailing of small boats without motors, getting in and out of the small craft harbour with moored boats and yachts is going to be extremely difficult. The entrance and exit to this harbour, the visibility or vision through that entrance and exit is very poor. So a small sailing boat trying to tack its way in and out could suddenly confront a motorised ski boat, fishing boat, trying to make its way back in, and it is a recipe for disaster. And laid on top of that, you've got all the wind shadows that are going to be created by the hotel that's going to get developed in the sea, a high hotel. All the surrounding buildings are going to seriously compromise wind flow in the area. And it really means that small boats sailing in this area, which has been one of the safest launch sites in Durban for KZN for many years, will be no more.
One of the points that hasn't been picked up by the authorities is if they're going to build this purportedly 32-story monstrosity high-rise hotel in the sea, I don't think any scientist can answer the question that we pose for them, and that is, what is the evolutionary consequences of ecological light pollution on these fish, especially the resident species upon which we depend, like the grunters and the stumpies and the pompana. These fish come into the reef at night time under cover of darkness.
Come from basically from a yachting background, and my main concerns are regarding yachting. And most people would err away from keeping them in such an exposed location. So the whole issue, as far as I'm concerned, is that it's unlikely to be a successful local marina. The main focus hasn't been on marina activities, it's been in terms of aesthetics. You'll see if you read the record of decision that there is no provision made in it for pumping of sewage, for instance from the hotel. There's no provision in it for boat maintenance, although they say a boat maintenance area must be constructed prior to development. A boat maintenance area in itself is an incredibly messy thing, and it hasn't been planned into the facility at all. There's no provision for pumping sewage from black water tanks on boats. In fact, there's no regulation in this country that actually makes it necessary for yachtsmen to actually do that. So basically sewage from a boat goes directly into the sea. There's no provision for protection against potential pollution and risk of pollution from fueling activities. There will be a fueling berth down there, it's been confirmed. And when you consider that that's right adjacent to what's supposed to be, or maybe a blue flag beach at some time in the future, the two things just don't sit well side by side. So A, it's immoral, and B, there are risks that haven't been considered properly in my view.
What we are concerned about is that eThekwini's Coastal Engineering Department has done a lot of modelling in terms of sea level rise, and this has proved conclusively that that whole area that they're proposing to develop on the beach and right close to the beach is going to be inundated. Now, as it is at the moment, eThekwini are looking at which areas along the coastline that falls under eThekwini are going to have to be defended, which means putting a lot of money into it, pumping sand from offshore to maintain our beaches and things like that. This is going to cost a fortune. Now, if we are still going to then, added onto it, maintain a private development, that is just not acceptable at all.
Slowly but surely, all our most important fishing places have been taken away from us, and we actually, at the moment, as I speak, we're excluded to a small fishing area around the Esplanade between the Bat Centre and Wilson's Wharf, and Snake Park Pier, Sunkus Pier, both of which are sanded up due to the council's Central Beachfront sand pumping scheme.
But as Durban promotes itself as a water sport destination, and there's no question that Vetch has hosted many successful sailing events and other events, water sports events in the past. And there's no question in my mind that this small craft harbour will compromise those. There's no ways that they will be able to host large numbers of small sailing boats in this new facility if it is constructed. There's also the existing economic benefits for water sports in Durban, in the greater KZN area. They generate huge financial benefits to the water sports industry, maintenance of boats and so forth, employment, and those are well-founded figures. The so-called economic benefits which are being presented by the developers, as I've mentioned earlier, are extremely dubious, and I think we're not going to see them bear fruit.
When you look at the motive that the developer has for actually undertaking the development, which is really providing a facade for development, and the activities that it will actually take away, it just seems very, very unfair, almost immoral, that you should take away a beach that's used largely by local folk for all sorts of water sports activities, for a marina that will not function correctly, to provide a facade for development.
There's also the cost to be considered. The economic models by the developers are extremely suspect, and they rely on all sorts of projections. And it is unlikely that they are going to make this a viable concern. And again, the ratepayers of Durban are going to have to carry the cost for this. It's going to become an elitist area and not accessible to the man in the street.